So yesterday.
Yeah, no problem. So, uh, Welcome everybody. Z, meet Mira, David, Meira. Meira is a doctoral student at Revel, and she's writing her dissertation on smell, the sense of smell in the Talmud, and the this sugya that we just studied, and actually also the beginning of the next one. You know what? I'm going to share my screen so we can all look at it together, and I'll ask Meira to. I don't know, to give us some insight. We looked at this long agada, and we saw one positive statement that said anyone who doesn't buy his wife jewelry and he can afford it, and she complains, then he becomes impoverished. Well, that sounds like it's positive, but the rest of it, building off of Pisukim, sounds quite negative. So, Meira, well, that's about jewelry specifically, but then it goes into perfume. So maybe you want to give us a little insight, a little summary of what you found.
Yeah, sure. So it's certainly very negative about perfume here. Um, so one thing that I do in my dissertation is sort of to think about the different ways different cultures relate to scents. And I think what we have, these negative associations with scents and perfume, are very similar to certain things you see in Roman writers. We could just look at the Midrash for a second. Let's see.
Tell me if you want me to go up or down.
Um, yeah, I think we're perfect just at the bottom here with these women who put perfume in their shoes, or they put these scents in their shoes, so when they walk, the scent disseminates into the markets, and it says, let's see, instills the evil inclination into them like the venom of a viper, which obviously very negative view of perfume as this promiscuous and very potent thing that, the whole onus of this is on the women, right? The men are sort of just affected. Um, and this is similar to what you find in Roman moralists writing about perfume, who write about perfume as this, Pliny calls it a superfluous luxury. It's actually he's one of the only examples where you can find perfume on the feet. But an example of this, the overboardness of the perfume, is the Emperor Nero perfuming his feet. And he also writes about um, how perfume can distract someone from the task at hand. So this idea of scent as something that's deceptive, and I think this is also in Aristotle, that scent is this irrational sort of animalistic sense that can lead you astray through your emotions. And I think that often when we find these very negative, they're not so many, but this is an example of one negative um, view of perfume or scent in the Bavli, they're often coming from sources like this one is a midrash that's also found in Vayikra Rabbah. They're coming from sources from the Roman world where you have this view of scent that's very negative. Whereas in the Bavli, the culture that the Bavli comes together in the Sasanian Empire, I think it's less common to find these negative associations with scent and with perfume. And it's more a holy good thing, which is actually how the sugya ends. I don't know if you read this yesterday, but the very end.
We didn't do this yesterday, so maybe you want to lead us through the end of it.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to read this very last line right here.
Hmm.
Um, so it says, Amar Rechava, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So Rechava says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Atzei Yerushalayim shel kinamon hayu. So the trees of Jerusalem were cinnamon. When they would burn them, their fragrance would disseminate in all of Israel. So here we have this scent as representing sort of the holiness of Israel. And this whole tradition is very, I think, sort of unusual. I don't know any other reference to cinnamon trees of Jerusalem. There's only a barley amount. There's only this tiny amount left in the storehouse of this phrase. It's unclear how exactly we should read this phrase, but the most usual way is that it's her name, Simsamai, Queen Simsamai. That's the only place the cinnamon is left, is in her storehouse. And who this queen is should not mention anywhere else. It's an unusual name, but I think there's symbolism in it. It's right, like with some sem, to retract. Even the name of who says this statement, rechava, this wide thing, the scent that's can pervade, is now retracted in the storehouse of this queen whose name means to retract. I don't know exactly what's going on here. If you have any ideas, please send them to me. But I think one thing that's happening is the negative associations with sense that we've read are sort of rewritten as more positive associations. So this whole section comes on the Mishnah, which talks about, the Mishnah is talking about whether or not you can go out on Shabbat wearing a vial of perfume or this bead of perfume. It doesn't use the word cinnamon, but it uses words, it's like, that is a cinnamon scent. And we have the women of Jerusalem, that tradition also, it's never anywhere else about Jerusalem specifically, but here, again, this reference to Jerusalem, it's sort of rereading that association of smell with the promiscuity of the women. It's rereading that as this positive thing where the cinnamon scent now is this spiritual, sense. It's something you can't see, you can't feel. And in the ancient world in general, is often it's thought of, is it physical, is it spiritual? It's uncertain, but it's here being reread as this holy, this spiritual association of scent, where it's now positive. And
are you sure?
Fantastic.
Are you sure about that? So can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
So this is reminding me of the Ayelet HaShachar ideas about Esther. So this Rahava and Simsimai.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a continuation maybe of the thoughts on women as opposed to really talking about trees? And it's not necessarily a complete divergence onto trees. Now this continues talking about women in this same, using again, just like metaphorical language, and embedded in here is something talking about how the women maybe used to be and are no longer, but not just cinnamon trees in Jerusalem.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. It's playing off the gender issue. I don't know exactly what it's doing. Maybe you have an idea.
I'm assuming that you get my reference to Esther, and I'm not going to make it more explicit here, but it could be something. I mean, you mentioned the Rahava and Simsimai.
Azzi, what you're saying is that the reference to good smell is actually about righteous women, and there were so many bad women, but there's still some righteous women left, but they're a minority. And
it feels like that. It feels like that. And again, just with regard to looking at the one above, talking about just the old wine, new wine, just all the different ways of.
Right. On the previous page, it was making metaphorical references to women using other things like wine and beds.
Right.
And they were talking about scent with women. Now they're coming back to women and using language that it just harkens back to some of the rabbinic talk about female genitalia.
Yeah.
So this is very unusual that you have Rachava quoting something in the name of Rabbi Yehuda.
Yeah.
Does she come up anywhere else?
Is it a woman? Rachava is a woman?
No, I don't think it's a woman. I think it's a rabbi.
Well, it says Amar Rachava.
Yeah.
Right.
I recall that when we learned about the gifts that Yaakov sent with the sons to Yosef, to when they were scared they're going to Benjamin and all that stuff, that it was the stuff he sent was extremely, extremely aromatic, and that linked us up to some midrashim that said that when the incense was burned in the Beit Mikdash, the scent was so phenomenal it reached over to Yeriko even.
Yes.
And that was quite something. I mean,
Chabad is a third generation Amara, well known. He's I'm not so well known, but he has many other statements.
Right, and just again that the only remnant of this fragrance is with this one woman,
and it's a contrast here, I think, between it's closed off, it's in this tiny container, versus the women before, their scent was going out into the public sphere. That was what was dangerous about it. It's this uncontrolled.
Okay,
but you have to imagine that the rabbis are going to have some positive feeling about smells, like so like it's
it doesn't have to be women's smell. Women's smell doesn't have to be
smells, right? But it has to be something that's positively associated with it. So you can't just be all bad. Since the smell isn't bad, so maybe there's somewhere that it's hidden away that it was still used the right way.
Right. So something interesting about the Bavli's editing, that we have this long section that you're saying is quoted from Vayikra, quoted from Eretz Yisrael sources, and it's all negative. And then you have this one, which is positive, which you're saying is should this be Rav Yehuda?
So, we said before that there's nothing else like it except for that tradition about the Ketoret going to, like, it's just so unusual and not parallel that it makes me think that it's Babylonian.
Yeah. So my question is, what are the Babylonian the Bavli editors doing because they are quoting the whole Eretz Yisrael portion here. So does that mean that they agree with it, or they're just quoting things, but they end off with an opposite? Is that in tension with the previous one? Are they arguing with it?
That was what I was aiming to say, that they're quoting it, but they're countering it and sort of giving this other view where Sent has this.
Right. Did you check manuscripts? Is this Rabbi supposed to be Rav Yehuda?
I did check them, but I don't think that they're.
Because it should be. I mean, if it's from. Chava generally quotes from Rav Yehuda, the second generation Amora.
I'm trying to.
And Eli, right?
It can't be. It doesn't make sense. The Chabad could not be quoting from Rav Yehuda, the Tanakh.
Remember, the cinnamon cinnamon was part of the Ketoret, part of the incense.
Right. Okay, very good. Mira, thank you so much for coming to visit. And I wanted to add one more idea, which is that in this whole sugya about women not wearing jewelry on Shabbat and not wearing the perfume on Shabbat, although the Talmud gives technical reasons why, because you may come to take it off and carry it and so on, it seems that there's perhaps an underlying reason that they want Shabbat to be more simple, toned down, and they don't want women wearing the overbearing jewelry and perfume. Shabbat should be plain. And so I'm wondering if the fact that they put all these agadot here about the negative associations is more than just an association, but telling us something about, okay, maybe during the week you're going to go overboard, but Shabbat we should get back to basics.
Stay home in our pajamas, as we do now.
Right. All right, very good. Thanks. Thank you, Mira, and you're welcome to stay for the...
I sent you an email. I'm teaching page 67 this Tuesday, which is all about the ridiculous put up.
Okay, we'll get to that. I know the Geonim talk about it and say you shouldn't use these for practical medicine today.
I want to get this into my shiur.
Yeah. Okay, I'll look for a source for that. All right, thank you, Mira, and you're welcome to stay for the rest. But I know you have a little baby, so if you need to go,
I'm gonna stay for a little bit and then probably leave early.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you so much for coming to visit. You see, you can never do this in a live daf yomi. I couldn't, bring you in just for 5 minutes into our shul, but this way is easy. Okay, next Mishnah. One of my favorite Mishnayot in all of Shas. Lo yaseh ha'ish lo basayif, lo bekeshev, lo betiris, v'lo ba'ala, v'lo baromach, v'im yasa, chayav hatat. Okay, so now we're going back to men cannot use. A man cannot go out with a sword, a bow, a shield, tiris, like in Hebrew, the tirisim, right, is the metal shades that they use, and not with a Allah, which I think we have a picture here.
Oh, wow.
We'll get to
Are
it.
you doing the daf now?
Yes.
Oh, I did it already. So long,
Okay.
folks. Shabbat shalom. Jackie, I'll call you.
And not with a spear. And if he did, chayav chatat. Rabbi Eliezer Omer takshitin hen lo. Says, what's wrong with them? This is, I know they're generally used for war, but actually they are ornaments. You think of a soldier all dressed up, and he looks impressive. So therefore, that should be just fine. Hachamim omrim enan ela lignai. These are not ornaments. This is horrible. שנאמר וכיתתו חרבותם לעתים וחניתותיהם למזמרות ולא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב ולא ילמדו עוד מלחמה. In general, we don't learn halachot from Nevi'im, but here it's not the halacha that we're learning, but the value, the approach to weapons. And since in the future we hope for a time when weapons will be beaten into plowshares and there'll be no more war, and so therefore implements of war are not glorious but reprehensible. And so I think this is just a beautiful Mishnah because it shows the values coming into the details of halacha. And so what do we consider these basic things? Shield and a sword. Is it something that what can we have to use it because we have to go to war here and the way the world is, but we wish we didn't have to, and therefore on Shabbat you wouldn't say it's something glorious. It's something that's an ornament. So that's, I think, really beautiful and interesting. Okay, birit tehora yosin ba b'Shabbat. Okay, back to just regular things. Garter that holds your socks up. First of all, it's tehora because it's not a kli in itself. It's not usable. It's just a band. And so even if it touched something tameh, it would stay tahor. And you can wear it on Shabbat because you're not going to come to take it off because then your socks will fall down. However, ankle chains, which was some kind of ornament like a ankle bracelet, that's tameh because it is jewelry, and you cannot wear it on Shabbat. Okay, so now we'll analyze this. My ba'ala kulpa. Allah means a club. I think this does come from a Persian word. I wonder if our English word club comes from, because P and B are interchangeable, right? Meira, are you familiar with this Persian word? Okay, so there we go. Okay, so that's yet another instrument. I mean, I'm trying to imagine someone coming to synagogue with a club, and walking in the street, and I guess he's looking like an ornament. But it does remind me in Israel, everybody coming to synagogue with their Uzis and M16s and sticking it under their chairs. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer omer tachshitin hen lo. Tanya amru lo Rabbi Eliezer v'chim achad tachshitin hen lo mipnei ma hen betelin limot hamashiach. He says if they're ornaments, then why should we beat them into plowshares? These are beautiful things that we should keep around. Go get your own plowshare. אמר להן לפי שאינן צריכין שנאמר לא יישא גוי אל גוי חרב ותהווה לנוי בעלמא. He says, well, it's just that we're going to beat them because we won't need them anymore for war, but they will still be things that will be noi, that they'll still be ornaments, even though since we're not going to need them, so we'll use the metal for better purposes. Like a candle during the daytime. What's the point? It's unnecessary. It doesn't help, doesn't do anything. Which is actually, today we don't, swords, no one's going to fight with a sword. When you have bigger weapons. So nowadays they've already become like candles in the daytime. Oh, Pili?
They can't have it where it's an ornament today relative to the times, but not going to be an ornament in the future.
Right. They want. I think Shabbat is supposed to be a 60th of Olam Haba. Shabbat should be pure. We don't start a war on Shabbat anyway. And so I think they are like, the Romans glorified war, and Jews did not. If we have to fight, we have to. But this is not something that we look forward to. We shouldn't consider this something that's glorious. Now this argues with Shemuel. Pliga de Shmuel. Both opinions argue with Shmuel because the Chachamim say there's not going to be war, and so therefore it's not glorious. Rabbi Eliezer says there may not be war, but it still looks nice when you wear it. But Shmuel said there's no difference between this world and the next and the times of Mashiach, except that we won't be under foreign rule. Which says that there'll always be poor people. And so you think, if something fundamental is going to change, if there are going to be miracles, then at least poor people should not have to go hungry. And yet, since in the Devarim says there will always be poor people in the land, that's not going to change, and neither will anything else fundamentally, except for that we'll have sovereignty. Even if you have sovereignty, still might need an army. There still will be war in the world. Okay, so therefore, it's not just they're going against, but it's really the pasuk itself in Yeshayahu. Mesaya le Rabbi Chiya bar Abba, Damar Rabbi Chiya bar Abba, kol nevi'im lo nitabu ella limot haMashiach, aval le'olam haba ayin lo ra'ata Elohim zulatecha. Okay, but does agree with this statement that all the nevi'im, that's how we could resolve. Well, no, still doesn't resolve. That's how that all the Nevi'im are talking about the Mot HaMashiach. That's when some things will change. We will have our own sovereignty. We won't be subject. But Olam Haba is a different story altogether. Even all the Nevi'im never spoke about the true final end of the world, only an intermediate stage of Yemot HaMashiach. Okay, which then supports that Yemot HaMashiach will not be so different from our current state. Vika de Amre, Amlu lo Rabbi Eliezer, Vechim Achad Tachshitin Enom Bipnei Mahen Betelin Limot HaMashiach. There's another version of that conversation. They said, why are you saying that they're going to go away if you do think that they are ornaments? Amar lehen, Af Limot HaMashiach Enan Betelin. Hainu Dishmuel Ufliga de Rabbi Chiya bar Abba. The other statement that says that they will be around, and so Rabbi Eliezer could fit with what Shemuel says, that there will still be war, and that's why it makes sense. In other words, in the first version, Rabbi Eliezer admitted there won't be war anymore, but he said they still will be ornaments and to look nice, even though they're not useful. And in this one, he agrees with Shemuel and says that there will not be, will still be war, and therefore we will still need them.
Rabbi Henry.
Yeah.
If man was created in the Garden of Eden, that day, 20 minutes later, he was at war with his wife, with a snake, with himself. It's never going to stop.
That's right. Okay. So, we do think of Yemot HaMashiach as a return to Gan Eden. So, we didn't have too much time there before, but that is the hope that we can get back to that state. So we keep trying. אמר לאביי לרב דימי ואמרי לרב אביה ואמרי לרב יוסף לרב דימי ואמרי לרב אביה ואמרי לאביי לרב יוסef. Okay, there's a tremendous amount of confusion about who said this to whom. But anyway, what they said is, my ta'ama de Rabbi Eliezer dama tachshitin hen lo dichtiv chagor harbecha yarech gibor hodecha v'hadarecha. The source for Rabbi Eliezer is a pasuk in Tehillim 45. It's describing a king in all his glory, and it talks about his sword being part of his glory and splendor. It's talking about the king marrying a new wife, a foreign woman. It's a very interesting and somewhat problematic mizmor because it's describing him and all his wives and all his concubines, and it's kind of like over the top. Like, really, is this the kind of king you want? My father-in-law has a whole commentary on this, but not for now.
If you're the king, it's good to be king.
Okay. Amar le Rav Kahana lemor bered Rav Huna. Hi, b'divrei Torah ketib. Says no, this whole mizmor, because if we go read it, you'll see it. So it's so problematic. The rabbis interpret it metaphorically, that all the sword, all the paraphernalia and everything that's mentioned there are all metaphors referencing to Torah. He's glorious in the Torah that he knows. Okay, typical midrashic move. Amale en mikra yosem mide peshuto. This is, those are beautiful midrashim, beautiful metaphors, but you cannot remove the pasuk completely from its context. I think peshuto, they say, means literal meaning, but lifshot mapa means to put spread a tablecloth. So in other words, you have to look at the whole context and the words themselves. It's nice to add a secondary metaphor, but the words themselves cannot be taken out of context.
Would love at some different time if we could do an analysis of how this is used throughout the Gemara and what
this principle of Yosemite Pishuta. Yep. Okay. Yeah, we're happy to. And I actually just read an article by Professor Christine Hayes. She analyzes these words, and many I've done before. But the word pshat and drash does not mean the way we use it in the Talmud itself. Amarav Kana kad havena bar temane sere shenin vava gemirna le lechule Talmud velava yadana den mikra yosemi de pishuto ad hashta. Says right, I already learned the whole Talmud at 18 years old, but I didn't know until now. I don't know how old he is now, and he never learned this principle. So this is quite amazing that he never knew that. Wasn't so widespread. Maika mashmalan ligmad inish v'hadar lisbad. This teaches you that first you should ligmad. Gemara means to learn everything by heart, bikiut, and get all the whole body of knowledge in your head, and then lisbad, and only then to go and explain it and make connections and go further. Right? This is the typical way, the Bar Kai method, right? Just read all the Pisukim without commentary, learn them, you have the content, and then you can go to the next level. Okay. Siman Zarot. That's the rabbis that are going to come up are with in this acronym. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Shene Talmidei Chachamim mechadedim ze laze b'halacha, Kadosh Baruch Hu masliach lahem, shene'emar v'hadarecha selach. Since we mentioned Psalm 45, we're going to go into other words that have come from that mizmor and give the metaphorical explanation. I know we just said en mikra, Yosemite Pishuto, but okay, we want to give the midrash and tell you what those do mean. So hadarecha selach, that al tikreh hadarecha ela v'hidedcha. He and het can interchange, and also resh and dalid, they don't sound the same, but they look the same. And so we can read that as v'chidedcha selach. If you have two sages that study together and they sharpen each other, the same way you sharpen two knives by rubbing them against each other, so though they will be successful. So this is a source for learning bechabruta. They will even become great. Can it be even if they're doing it for selfish, self-aggrandizing purposes? No, only if they're sincere and they are seeking the truth together. Not if they're just doing a competition. This is knocking. These rhetoricians would get together and kind of compete on poetry slam, but it was just about persuasion and being aggrandizement, not about actually wanting to know the truth. So that doesn't work. If he makes himself haughty, no, you have to be humble. Reading Torecha is teaching greatness from your right hand. Wonderful. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Zochin lidvarim shenemru b'minah shel Torah d'amar bar Rav Shela v'amri Rav Yosef bar Chama amar Rav Sheshat ma dichtiv orech yamim b'minah u'b'smola osher v'chavod ela b'minah orech yamim ika osher v'chavod leka ela lemay minim ba orech yamim ika choshiken osher v'chavod lamasmi'ilim ba osher v'chavod ika orech yamim leka. So those who study those who study with good intentions for its own sake, they are like they get the right hand, which it means they get long life and riches. Those who don't study lishma are like the left hand, and they only get half of that. Amar Yirmiyah. Okay, you should always go to the right. Don't be a lefty. Amar Yirmiyah, Amar Shimon ben Lakish, Sheneta Menachem Zeh Lazeh Bahalacha. Kadosh Baruch Hu makshib lahen, Shneimar az nidberu yireh Hashem, and dibur ela nachat. Shneimar yadber amim tachtenum. Two sages who are nice to each other in halacha, and they agree with each other. God will listen to them. And so, because dibur means something with kam, yadber. Actually, the pashat of yadber is to subdue forcefully, but it has a sense of lidaber also, is a similar root. So they speak to each other and communicate and agree. Ma'el choshebe shemo, amar Rabbi Ameh, afilu chisheb la'asot misvah, v'ne'enas v'lo asa'ah, ma'aleh alav ha'katuv, ilu asa'ah. Choshebe, those who think about God. What do you mean those who think about? That he had intention to do a mitzvah, and he didn't get a chance. He wasn't able to get there. It's still considered as if he did it. Amar Chinena bar Idi, kol ha'aseh mitzvah k'ma'amaraha. En mebasirin oto besorot ra'o, shenemar shomer mitzvah lo yeda davar ra'a. You do mitzvah as punctiliously, he will not hear bad news. As it says in Kohelet, if you keep a mitzvah, you won't know a bad thing. אמר רב אסי תמר רבי חנינא, אפילו הקדוש ברוך הוא, כל זה גזרם בבטלה, שנאמר, ואשר במלך שלטון, מי אמר לו מה תעשה, וסמיך לה, שומר מצווה, לא ידע דבר רע. In Kohelet, the pasuk right before says that because God is king, who can tell God what to do? I mean, in other words, even if God makes an evil decree, he can take it back, right? God is in charge of everything. So therefore, even if something bad was going to happen, if someone does a mitzvah, it will be reversed. אמר רבי אבא, אמר רבי שמעון בן לקיש, תלמידיכם מקשיבים זה לזה בהלכה, הקדוש ברוך הוא שומע לכל הנשמה, יושב בגנים, חברים מקשיבים לקולך, השמיעיני. The sages who are listen to each other, and God will listen to them. As it says, מקשיבים לקולך, השמיעיני. God will listen to those who listen to each other. אם עושים כן, גורמים לשכנה שמסתלקת מישראל שנאמר, ברך דודי ודמה וכו'. The next pasuk in Shir Shirim says that running away. That's talking about the opposite. If they don't do so, God will run away from them. אמר רבי אבא, אמר רבי שמעון בן לקיש, שאין אתם לכם המדגילים זה בזה בהלכה, הקדוש ברוך הוא אהבן, שנאמר, ודיגלו עלי אהבה. Right, even if they cause each other to err, but they're trying, at least they're together, God still loves them. So diglo alay ahaba. I remember when we used to study with Rabbi Aluf, sometimes we would skip a section. So, he didn't feel bad, so he'd read this as v'didlu go alay ahaba. Right, God loves when we skip parts. Amar Rava, v'hu diyad'e surata dishma'ata. God only loves them if they at least know the basic form of the sugya, right? If they're just complete ignoramuses and just saying nonsense, that's not called an error that God loves. They have to do their homework, and only if there's no rabbi in the town that they could study with. So it's not their fault. They made a mistake. If there is a great sage in the town, they should go study with him and not make mistakes. Okay, this surata dishmata is very important in the analysis of Chacham Faur. He has a whole theory about the forms of Talmudic sugyot, 2-part form, 3-part form, and he says this is a basic fundamental thing. You can't go on and study anything without knowing the surata dishmata, the form of the sugyot. Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. גדול המלווה יותר מן העושה צדקה ומטיל בכיס יותר מכולן. Better to lend money to someone than to give charity, and if you put it into a common fund, that's even better because the person is not embarrassed to receive it. אמר רבי אבא, אמר רבי שמעון בן לקיש, אם תלמיד חכם נוקם ונוטל כנחש, הוא חוגרהו על מותניך. אם עם הארץ הוא חסיד, אל תדור בשכונתו. If you have a sage, even if he is he's vengeful, begrudging, which are not great character traits, still hold on to him, because at least he's a tamid chacham. And if you have someone who's an ignoramus, even if he's a great nice guy, then don't live near him. In other words, knowledge is more important than character traits. Okay, maybe he's vengeful and begrudging about his Torah knowledge. He wants to make sure that nobody gets anything wrong, and so that's part of what makes him great. Okay, but an ignoramus, he's a nice guy, but if he doesn't know anything, he's going to come to evil.
So,
yeah.
Just pausing for 1 second. Who says this?
Resh Lakish?
And where is it? Just is where is he from?
Eretz Yisrael. First generation, a colleague of Rabbi Yochanan.
It feels.
He's the one that used to be a bandit.
No, it feels Babylonian though, with like the negativity toward the Am Haaretz, but.
Right. Okay, so look, we have to trace if there's a parallel in Talmud Yerushalmi, and maybe the parallel might be different. So that's the most important methodological question, I think, is when something is found in the name of an Eretz Yisrael Amorah, but it's in the Talmud Bavli, does that make it reflect Eretz Yisrael views or Babylonian views? The fact that it's only quoted in the Bavli and not in Yerushalmi, or it's changed in some way, or the attribution, we have to check into it and see if that's accurate. So it's possible that it might. Okay, we compare with the long section in Pesachim, the fourth Perek, a long section, very negative about Ameh Haaretz. We can compare with that, see if there's anything similar.
So that line takes us back to the Tehillim, where the sword becomes not Torah, it becomes a step further, Talmid Hacham.
Oh, very nice. Chogrehu al motnecha. Beautiful. Right. Put him around your waist like girding yourself with a sword. Okay, excellent. Amar Rav Kana, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Same stage, but Amar Rav Amri la Rav Asi, Amar Resh Lakish. Amri la Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. כל המגדל כלב רע בתוך ביתו מונע חסד בתוך ביתו, שנאמר למס מרעהו חסד, שכן בלשון יוונית קוראים לכלב למס. Okay, you should not own a dog in your home because that will bring bad. You're preventing kindness. The problem is it's going to scare people, and so you're causing people to get scared, and that's the opposite of treating people with chesed. And lamas mereu chesed, and lamas apparently in Greek, not Greek that we know, means dog, and it means limos means something like plague. Maybe it was as a colloquial name for a dog there. But this is a halacha l'maaseh. Rabbi Yitzchak Abadi, I remember him saying, right, you're not allowed to own a dog. He was very machmir about that. Okay, Amar Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amar Af porek menu yirat shamayim shnemar yirat shaddai ya'azob. Right, he's also not only ben adam lachavero but ben adam lamakom. He yirat shamayim leaves him.
So just mentioning him, he found the kula for my mother who already owned a dog.
Ah, okay. Right. So fundamentally it's not allowed, but in certain cases maybe it's a little puppy or she's not it's not scaring anybody. So a pregnant woman went to a bakery and there was a dog there, barked at her, and she miscarried from fright. Don't have to worry because I removed his claws and removed his teeth. Can't do any harm. This is like how she treated her dog. אמרה לשיקולה תיבותיך ושג'ע חזרי כבר נד וולד. You could take your don't worry and throw it to the thorns because my fetus is already gone. Too late. אמר רב הונא, מה דכתיב שמח בחור בילדותך, והייתי בך לבך בימי בחורותיך, והלך בדרכי לבך ומראה עיניך, ודע כי על כל אלה ביאך האלוהים במשפט. Difficult pasuk because the first half says, when you're young, you could have good cheer and do whatever you want. And then the second half just says, but know that God will judge you. So, well, then I really shouldn't do whatever I want when I'm young. Until the words enecha, that's what Yetzirah tells you. Tov says, be careful, there's going to be an accounting for all those decisions. Don't read the first half literally, but rather it's talking about Torah. When you're young, learn all kinds of Torah and make chidushim and say interesting things. And then the second half is know that you actually have to go put them into practice. When you learn that this is the right way to do, then actually do it. And if you just know it but don't do it, then you will be called to judgment. So again, they were continuing with that metaphorical understanding of any problematic pisukim that seem too hedonistic, like Mizmor 45, we interpret for Torah. Birit, okay, back to the socks. Birit tehora amar Yehuda. Birit zo etzada. What is that? It's a bracelet. It's a bracelet. Well, but they're usually worn around the arm, but in this case, it's around the feet. Metib Rav Yosef birit tehora. Rav Yosef baba Shabbat. Ilesada temeahi. What are you talking about? That's a bracelet. A bracelet would be tameh because it's a piece of jewelry, and this one says it's tahor. It means it's not a piece of jewelry. It means that it's similar. And when if it's on the arm, then it's jewelry, then it's tameh. But this one is on the leg, and so it's only there to hold up the stockings. It's not seen, and therefore it's tahor. Yatib Rabin v'Rabuna kamed Rabbi Yirmiyah v'Yatib Rabbi Yirmiyah b'ka menamnem. Okay, you have these two students in front of their Rabbi Yirmiyah, and the rabbi was sleeping. I guess the student's discussion was boring him. V'Yatib Rabin v'ka amar berit b'achad kebalim b'shnayim. So different. Berit is a garter you could wear on one leg, but kebalim, ankle chains, you wear on two legs. I think this is a demonstration of two sages going back and forth and sharpening each other in halacha. Because as they go more and more, they have better understanding of the law. Marle Rav Huna, as the other student sitting there, no, the birit is also two. You wear it on both legs. You want both of your socks to stay up. But if you put a chain between them, then that's when it becomes kebalim. That's when it becomes the ankle chains. And so wait. When it's a kabelet, when it's a birit, when it's a birit, it's tahor because there's no, it's not a utensil in itself. But then when you put a chain on it, then it becomes ankle chains and it's tameh just by adding a chain. So if you want to say it becomes tameh because now it makes noise. If you walk with chains on, the chain is going to make noise. And there's a general principle that anything made out of metal, usually something made out of metal has to be something that can at least hold a little bit of water. If it's not, then what makes it a utensil? If it makes noise, like a bell, right, then it's also tameh. And we learned this from the extra word davar. When they got the spoils from Midian, it could have said kol asher yavo ba'esh, yavi ba'esh, in order to purify anything metal, anything that is used in fire, you bring it into fire. The word davar comes to add davar, dibur, something that makes a sound. Fine. Right, that's talking about other things that make a sound, but it's a useful, like a bell. You want that sound, but here the chain. What's the purpose of the chain? Is it the main goal is not to make a sound? It's not an instrument. So why did they put chains between the ankle bracelets? They weren't in prison. החנמה כעביד מעשה, אמר רבא בר חנא, אמר רבי יוחנן, משפחה אחת הייתה בירושלים שהיו פסיעותיהן גסות, והיו בתולדותיהן נושרות. There was this family, it was the women, they used to have big strides, and because of that, they would lose their hymens. They would be stretched. עשו להן כבלים והטילו שלשלת ביניהן שלא יהיו פסיעותיהן גסות, ולא בתולדותיהן נושרות. And so, they trained themselves to walk with small steps with these ankle bracelets, and that way their betulim were kept intact. Itar behu Rabbi Yirmiyah amar lehu yishar v'chen amar Rabbi Yochanan. Just then, Rabbi Yirmiyah woke up and he said, "Hazak u'baruch." That's correct. What you just said. Rabbi Yochanan said the same thing. Okay, so he's sleeping this whole time. The point is he's sleeping, and so the students have to figure it out on their own. And so they're going back and forth and says it like that, it's like that, and finally they come up with the law on their own, and then he's able to wake up and tell them the same thing. This story reminds me, I'm talking about all my teachers today, of Professor Schiffman. In class, he often used to fall asleep in the middle of class. It's a graduate school seminar. So the graduate students, we're giving presentations and discussing with each other, and he dozes off. But just right when you finish, he wakes up and asks a question. In big conferences also, he's like sitting in the front, half dozing, and then as soon as he finishes, he's the first one to ask some brilliant questions. I guess he was listening the whole time. כי אתה רב דימי אמר רבי יוחנן מניין להריג כלשהו שהוא טמא מסיס. In the name of Rabbi Yochanan, when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he asked a question. He says, how do you know that something that is woven, even if it's very small, it could still mikabel tumah? You learn that from the seats, because the seats was very small, but still it's a utensil, it's mikabel tumah. We have to distinguish this between, if you take a piece of clothing and it gets ripped, and so then there is a minimum size of 3 by 3. This is talking about something that's new and woven, and supposed to be small. So there's no minimum size for something to be tameh. Amar Abaye, v'sis arigu. What are you talking about? Is the seats made out of something that's woven? V'tanya sis kemin tas shel zahav, v'rochab shetes ba'ot mukaf me'ozen ozen, v'chatu bala b'shte shitin, yod ke, u'lemala, v'kodesh lemata. So it's not made out of woven material. It's a thin piece of gold that says Yud Ke Vav Ke and Kodesh Le on the bottom. Really, it should be the opposite. Kodesh Le should be on the first line and God's name on the second line. But it's not nice to put God's name on the second line. So instead, they put God's name higher, and you have to read it as Kodesh Le and then go up Kodesh La Hashem. The point is the Kohen Gadol is holy, dedicated, and holy to God. And so the seats is made out of metal, not out of woven material. So you can't learn it from there. That the smallest bit is and that any size can be tameh of woven material. Amar Rabbi Eliezer b'Rabbi Yosei, ani re'iti b'ir Romi v'chatub kodesh laHashem b'shita achat. I saw the seats in Rome, and I saw that it says kodesh laHashem on one line altogether, not on 2 lines. How did he see it in Rome? Rabbi Eliezer, how do you see it in Rome? Well, we know what happened to all the kelim of the Bet HaMikdash. They were taken by the Romans, as you know from the Arch of Titus, right? You see them carrying the menorah, shulchan, including, it doesn't have the seats there, but we can imagine they would have taken that as well. And they took it to Rome and they put it in the Museum of Peace. We know where it is. We can, with the archaeologists have found, it was a big open area with porticos, and in this Museum of Peace, it should have been called the Museum of War. It was all the things that they looted from every place that they conquered, and to show their great strength. And well, now it's peaceful because they killed everyone who went against them. And so the menorah and the seats and other things were on display there for everyone in the world to come and see. And so this is a true statement, right? He went to Rome and it would have been on display and he could have seen it. There's another place where it says a rabbi went to Rome and he saw the menorah. So they were in fact there. All right, not too different from our museums. Any museum of the Louvre or the British Museum are also all the things that these countries took while they were when it took over other countries and stole. Okay. Kisalik Rav Dimi lenahar de'ah shelach lehu devarim shamati lachem ta'utem biyadi beram kach amru mishum Rabbi Yochanan. So because of this question, he said that the smallest bit of a woven thing we learned from the seats, but we proved that that's wrong because the seats is made out of metal. So then he went back and says, oh, I made a mistake. This is actually what Rabbi Yochanan said. How do we know that the smallest piece of jewelry, any size, is tameh, even if it's small? We learned that from seats, which was quite small. How do we know that any woven material, even if it's a small size, is tameh? We learn it from the extra word o in o beged. Tanu Rabbanan arig kol shehu tameh v'tachshit kol shehu tameh. Arig v'tachshit kol shehu tameh. We have a baraita that says, in fact, woven material any size, jewelry any size, or something that's half-half. It's some piece of jewelry that's connected to something woven. Also any size tameh. Musaf sak al habeged shetameh mishum arig. And in addition to that, sackcloth that's added to a garment is also ritually impure when it's connected. Amar Rava, arig kol shu tameh me'o beged, tachshit kol shu tameh misis, arig v'tachshit kol shu tameh mi kol keli ma'aseh. That's back to the war against Midian. It says that Moshe took all the items which were useful, and so it says this kol is coming to include something that's half and half. So that's talking about specifically Midian, and so you can't learn. And there they were all tameh met, right? Because it's in the middle of a war. But how can you learn from there, which is the highest level, to all other types of impurity? Maleh gamar keli keli mehatam. We learn Gezerah Shavah says the word keli there. It says the word keli regarding other types of tum'ah, and therefore we learn it from that Gezerah Shavah. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. So we'll continue on.